Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our September's Outdoor Florida webinar. This month, we are focusing on disability inclusion in outdoor recreation. We will hear from David Jones, founder of the SportsAbility Alliance, formerly the Florida Disabled Outdoors Association, a nonprofit organization whose mission is promoting accessible, inclusive recreation for all. David is a native and lifelong resident of Tallahassee, and he has worked with national, state, county, and city agencies, as well as other recreation providers to improve accessibility in their programs. At the end of David's presentation, we will have a question and answer portion, so please submit your questions into the chat box, and we will get to them after the presentation. David, you may go ahead and begin, and I will share my screen now.
Okay, very good. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for the privilege for me to come out and introduce myself and tell you a little bit about our organization and what we do and why we do it, how we might can help you with your issues and questions and obligations. I am the founder of the Florida Disabled Outdoors Association, which we have rebranded to SportsAbility Alliance over the years due to the fact that we've kind of grown in our scope to more than just outdoor activities and more than just people with disabilities, but to all people with all abilities. People kept calling us SportsAbility. So we decided if that's what people thought we were, that's who we are. So we've actually rebranded as SportsAbility Alliance, and we're proud to work with people like you to provide recreation for the public, our residents, and our travelers and guests from around the world, really. A little bit about me. I'm the founder of the organization. I'm like you heard, I'm a native of Tallahassee. That's why I've got this deep South Georgia accent. Tallahassee, being a small town when I grew up here, really is just like South Georgia, 30 miles from Georgia and 30 miles from the coast. So we're in a unique place here in Tallahassee. Lots of outdoor recreation opportunities here in our area that we've really enjoyed over the years and really made me who I am. That's kind of the way you grow up here in Tallahassee. And I think you can go ahead and flip the slide there and we'll see yeah, there we go. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Growing up here in Tallahassee, I actually was shot in a hunting accident in 1988 that changed my life drastically in a split moment. Did not have a whole lot of interaction with people with disabilities before that point in time, like a lot of folks. 1988, of course, was before the 1990 ADA law came into being, so there wasn't as much emphasis and recognition of disability back in the old days. But we've come a long ways, and the world's a better place because of it. My story is I had taken a new acquaintance out on a spring morning turkey hunt, and due to a lot of unfortunate circumstances, I became the target and the turkey, and my new friend actually shot me, and I survived a very serious brain injury that left me in a hospital for 3 solid months trying to learn how to live again, rehabbing. Couldn't walk, couldn't talk, had double vision. So I became very differently abled from what I was my whole life, being a very active, outdoors kind of person to now not knowing what tomorrow was going to bring, and the concerns of how to adjust and where to go were tough and difficult. I did spend 3 solid months living in a rehab facility, learning how to live again, and went through the physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. But one of the most important therapies that I had the privilege or to endure was the recreational therapy, which is sometimes not available through typical therapeutic services. But I learned, and we now learn as society, how important recreation is for people, especially in the healing and what have you. I'll tell you a little bit about some of our programs as we go along, but that's kind of how I got involved. I actually became, I guess by default, a go-to person to learn about how to provide services for people with disabilities, to adhere to the new laws, to how to not to discriminate. So I actually worked with the Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, when they were trying to enforce the ADA laws and trying to implement the programs and procedures. I actually got involved with them early on because I went to a mobility impaired hunt that Florida had here and was really very disappointed in what I found when I got there. The excitement and the opportunity to participate was great, and it was very motivational and inspirational to me to know I had somewhere to go, that somebody thought about people with disabilities going hunting. But when I got to the program, it was only just a date on a map, a place. So I didn't really have any support or any help on how to hunt with a severe disability. I came back from that experience, took what I thought was a good plan to include people with disabilities into hunting to the St. Mark's Wildlife Refuge and proposed doing a mobility impaired hunt on the refuge. And we did, with a nice set of guidelines that are still the basics for today's mobility impaired hunt program. Very successful program. Continue that still to this day, but actually expanded to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission and asked them to embrace that mobility impaired hunt program, which they did. And that program has grown over the years to include up to like 23 mobility impaired hunts now. It's a very successful program, but that was my early introduction to the ADA and some of my early involvements, working with FWC and the state parks on how they had to adhere to the new laws. A lot of what I did early on. We've moved along as we progressed and included many programs now. Miracle Sports is our local Tallahassee athletic program where we have adapted a field and made it an accessible field and altered rules of our activities and games so that everybody can participate. So that's our kind of local Miracle Sports program. And I'll talk a little more about that down the road. And then our SportsAbility event, that is an annual event that we do here in Tallahassee every year, but also around the state. We typically do 3 SportsAbility events, which is an expo with a recreation and resource sharing opportunities that we do around the state. So that SportsAbility is really what put us on the map, and that's why people call it SportsAbility. And then our All Out program is an outdoor adventure program where we take people on outdoor adventure trips, hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, skiing, those type of activities. Rec Connect is our information resource referral program that helps people find things to do, places to do it, and how to do it, and who to connect with. And then the other thing that we're really involved with and stay involved with continuously is advocacy. And that's advocacy for disability sensitivity and disability opportunities, and then also advocacy for recreation and conservation, which is our roots. And I'll stay real involved with that today. Okay, let's see what we got next. Okay, well, I mentioned a couple of things, the benefits of recreation, and not knowing who exactly my audience is, I would assume a lot of you are in the recreation providing business, agencies and organizations that provide recreation, and you may be curious on how to better do what you do. Of course, some of this will be preaching to the choir then, but we now know that healing is a big benefit from recreation. I learned that in the hospital with the therapeutic recreation program that I went through for 3 months, and actually a whole year of outpatient. So healing is a big part of what recreation does for folks, and there's all kinds of studies that proves that now. And then wellness, of course, is we want to stay well. When you're active and healthy and involved with recreation, your chances of remaining healthy are much better. Getting people to stay active and stay involved is a challenge. For people with disabilities, it's even a greater challenge. But also, recreation gives you a sense of contentment, and some personal and societal development, job opportunities. So there's a lot of benefits to recreation. And again, I'm preaching to the choir. So we all know that. Let's go see what we got next. Okay, and why? Because the population of people with disabilities is very significant. About a quarter of the people in the country has a disability, and that's self-reported disability. So that's not us labeling somebody with a disability. These are people who report that they have a disability. And another big important stat, 15% of all these people with disabilities have mobility impairments, which we have found has been one of the major limitations to getting involved with recreation. It's just the inability to be ambulatory or mobile within a recreation setting. And then we say 40% of all people with disabilities also report difficulty with mobility. So of all the disability types, cognitive, emotional, physical, sensory disabilities, 40% of all those people also report having difficulty walking, which is a significant amount of people. So we really like to focus on trying to improve and remove the barriers to mobility. That's one of the main ways to reach the most people, I think, that provides benefit for everybody. And the fact that now I'm a great example. I just can't believe that I'm creeping up in age now, but the boomers are taking over. And over 40% of the people that are over 65 years old report having a disability. And that just makes sense. And, you know, I've said before, we will all experience disability sometime in our life, unless you get lucky and die young, and that's an off-color joke. People will become more and more unabled as they age. Aging is a big factor of disability. So we need to take care of our aging boomers, us. Yes, ma'am. Okay, why outdoor recreation? I told you I grew up here in Tallahassee, very involved with hunting and fishing and camping and hiking and boating. That was my life. That was the things I did, along with our baseball, football, and athletic kind of things. But being outdoors was very important to me. And I really realized that significance in the therapeutic recreation program that I went through. One of the first things you do is you do a self-assessment of who you are, what you've done, what you've enjoyed doing, and then what you would like to continue to do after, you know, surviving a disability or acquiring health complications or whatever. So I realized how important that outdoor recreation was to me, because when I laid up in that hospital for 3 months, staring at the ceiling, wondering what's next, the things I thought about, my memories of the past were outdoor activities with my family and friends. That's what's really, thankfully, kept me motivated and moving forward. And I was very fortunate that although I do have traumatic brain injury and have memory issues and organizational issues that comes along with typical brain injury complications, my long-term memory was pretty intact. So I remembered all those great times, and that's who you are. Your memories of the past and your experiences really determines who you are today. So that when I realized how important that recreation was in my life, and then how it played into the healing, I realized how important it was to keep that going and to provide people those opportunities. And you see the health benefits that come along with it. And they're all proven now, you know, through research. We used to just know it and we would say it, but now we have the research to back it up, and all the evidence that we are really helping ourselves when we get outdoor in nature. Okay. Well, when I mentioned this earlier, my personal experience with my own recovery and rehabilitation really led me to understand how serious the lack of mobility or ambulation is in doing things. I remember when I went into the rehab hospital, one of the therapists in my orientation asked me, "What do you want to get out of your rehabilitation?" I said, "I just need to be able to walk." In my mind, I knew if I could walk, I could still do the things I wanted to do and go where I wanted to go. Even with paralysis, I am a hemiplegic, so my left side is paralyzed, and I still have limited mobility. Rode a wheelchair for a year before I could walk, graduated to a walker and then a cane. And then I was very blessed to be able to keep getting stronger. And so I do walk now with very limited assistance, usually a cane to come outdoors or in a stressful or long range area of needing some support. But I realized how important mobility was, and ambulation is tough. And So that's the biggest barrier I see that we need to really address, trying to create better access. Now, the second biggest thing, we used to always say attitude was the next biggest thing, which I still believe attitude is very utmost and important, to have the right attitude of why you want to provide inclusive, accessible recreation. But I also realize that the barrier is really just the lack of knowledge. And that's kind of something we can solve with our different methods of curing or addressing the lack of knowledge. Now, that lack of knowledge is not just the lack of knowledge by people with disabilities on knowing where to go, how to go, and what to do, because we are a big advocate and provide services for people with disabilities, but we are also a big provider of services and information and knowledge to providers of recreation. And I kind of assume that's where most of our audience today is. You're probably more in the providers of recreation category than the consumers, although you saw the significance of disability were everywhere, so providers of recreation are also consumers. But the lack of knowledge can be solved through training and advocacy and awareness, a lot of things that we can do to increase our knowledge. So how to provide. Fear is one of the biggest things that we have to overcome in the recreation world, is not knowing what to do or scared to do something wrong. So we've got to overcome the fear, and to do that, you just get a little bit of training, a little bit of awareness, a little bit of engagement with people with disabilities, and you'll soon become comfortable and realize that people with disabilities are just people. And so we got to work on the knowledge base. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so what is disability inclusion? And that's what we really want to focus on. We are a disability support organization. Inclusion is a much bigger word than just disability, but our focus and our objectives are all about disability inclusion. So how do we include people with disabilities? What is a disability? What does it mean to be inclusive? Well, it means that all people can participate in everyday activities and along with their peers and their family and their friends, just like they would if they didn't have a disability. So not going to special programs and special modified activities for people with disabilities, but people with and without disabilities doing things that we normally would do anyway. Where we would do them, when and how and where we do that is what inclusion is all about. And it's so important that we realize that and try to accommodate everyone. And of course, universal design and removing and eliminating the physical barriers is one of the first things you have to do. So you can't have an inclusive program if you have a program that you can't even get to. So that's where the ADA comes in. And y'all, I know the ADA comes with a lot of thoughts and opinions. The ADA is a law, and many of you who are providers of services through agencies and organizations are required to provide access and inclusion into your programs, and that becomes kind of threatening sometimes. So we moved away from ADA compliance and ADA issues years ago because I really do not focus a lot on that. You can go look up the codes, building codes, and look up, the things that the ADA requires, and then lawyers sort it out to make sure you're doing the right thing if there is a complaint. But we are really more focused on inclusion. How do we invite and welcome all people to all of our programs? Okay, let's take a next look, please, ma'am. Okay, what does inclusion look like? Well, the number one thing I said before, attitudes, having the right attitude really removes most of the barriers and most of the complications that comes along with trying to include people with disabilities. And the way to do that is to become engaged and involved with disability sensitivity and realize that people with disabilities are just people. So that changes your attitudes. And, I'm doing a quick little run through here on inclusion and programming inclusion, but we as an organization actually created a full 2-day class workshop on how to provide inclusion that we provided for some recreation businesses and organizations over the years, trying to consolidate that whole message and that whole learning experience into a 20-minute PowerPoint is impossible. but I will hit on a few highlights and a few things that may stick with you. And do know that there are a lot more detailed things you can do to achieve your inclusion in your programs. And we have some of those available, and we're a resource for you to come to. But physical accessibility, like I said, universal design is so important. Doing it right to start with instead of coming back and having to retrofit things is so important in your planning. To think about physical accessibility up front. Program accessibility, that's the big one. And that's where we really come in, because we don't really get involved a lot with your ADA codes and building codes, but we are very engaged and involved with your program access. And that's kind of what some of our history is. We helped the state parks become more inclusive years ago when there was a lawsuit against the John Pennekamp State Park. They wouldn't let people in wheelchairs on their dive boat. So we helped them overcome that barrier and to learn a lot more about how to include people with disabilities into the state parks program. And I'm very proud that our state parks have done a great job of embracing inclusion as part of their culture. And they do training now, and they have very sensitive and caring people who are the park managers and employees that do accommodate and are sensitive to people with disabilities. We'll talk a little more about that too. But how do you do that? Well, you can do it in several ways. One is to modify your program so that if you have rules or guidelines that prohibit someone with a disability from participating, of course, we want to change those. And you can do that by law. You can come in and change your program rules and guidelines if you're accommodating people with disabilities. So modifying the rules of the game, we'll talk about a little bit. I'll give you some examples. And we can use adaptive equipment, because there's all kinds of new adaptive equipment now. And you see a picture of a guy fishing here. We have electric fishing reels, and we have fishing pole holders. And there's all kinds of assistive technologies that can help people do what they want to do like everybody else, and do it with other folks at the same time. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Okay, I mentioned the three main ways that we need to think about is how do we modify our programs? And that's the number one thing you do. And I've got some examples I'll tell you about in just a minute here. But modifying the programs is the first thing you should look at doing. And that could be changing times, places, qualifiers for who can participate and who can't, what have you. There's a lot of ways to modify your program to adjust and adapt to people with disabilities. And then you can also create, I guess, like special permits and other ways that you can include people by not having to change the whole program guidelines, but to allow reasonable modifications is what we call them. So you can modify individually to suit a disability as long as that doesn't become a negative or a deterrent for other people to participate. We don't want to take away opportunities or take away the experience by providing opportunities for people with disabilities. We want to merge them all into one cohesive recreational experience. Assistive technology, as I mentioned, and I'll give you some examples of some of those things too. You can add equipment and different tools and toys that makes the program more accessible. And then, of course, the other way that we a lot of times look at as a difficult thing to do is providing extra staff. Sometimes that's very difficult to do because with budgets and the staffing being so short these days, it is a continuous problem. But there's ways to solve that through volunteers, through collaborative efforts with other organizations, school students, and I'll give you some examples of what we've done with that with extra staff. Allowing a companion is one of the easiest, quickest ways, because a family member or a personal friend of a person with a disability would be more knowledgeable and successful in trying to provide extra support for someone with a disability because they know the disability and they know the person. So I would always look at family and friends as companions, be included in the program at no extra cost without it changing any of the rules. So extra staff is an important thing, and that staff is not just staff, that's volunteers. We have a service learning program with FSU where we have FSU students come out and get class credit for being our so-called volunteers to help run our programs for our Miracle Sports program. And more about that in a minute too. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, and here we are. This is Miracle Sports. So this is an athletic type program that we have here in Tallahassee, which may or may not be appropriate for a lot of you, but these are just some good examples of how we altered the program. We modified the program to make it accessible and inclusive for everybody. Well, the first thing you can do is lower the fees or get rid of the fees or provide scholarships. Economic barriers are real barriers for people with disabilities. So knowing that up front and offering a way for people to work around that so that they're not going to be excluded because they didn't have the fees or the monies to participate. And those are usually pretty easy to solve with, big budgets and recreation programs, allow for minute charges like that. We do baseball, kickball, and tennis with our Miracle Sports program. These are just some of the baseball adaptations and modifications that we did. Typically in a baseball game, you pitch and you get 3 strikes and you're out, or you walk, take a base. We do not do that with Miracle Sports. We make it so that everyone has to participate to get up there and hit the ball and run to first base and second base. So we do not strike out. We use a tee if they cannot hit a pitch. So that's another simple, basic assistive technology that, believe it or not, is a very basic tool for all baseball players. Even the professionals spend hours hitting a ball off a tee because it teaches skills. And so that same concept we use as an alternative or an option for people who can't hit a pitched ball or have difficulty doing it. And it's their choice to decide what they want to do. Everybody hits the ball and moves one base at a time. So there's no power hitters that you put back and forth, clean up. He hits a triple or a home run every time. So everybody's equal. You hit the ball, you move to first base, and then you wait there and you get your high fives because you made it. And then you wait for the next batter to hit, and then you move to the next base. So it's just a very controlled program so that everybody is equally involved and engaged and nobody gets left out. Collaboration is another great way to provide modifications and to expand your inclusion efforts. We built our field with collaborating with the city of Tallahassee, who really helped us a lot with our program there to get the field built. The Kiwanis clubs, the Big Bend, really helped us fund the field, and now they're still engaged. They provide scholarships for those who do not have a $30 a year fee, and they provide snacks at every one of our weekly games. So they come out, and our athletes are all ages. We've got them young, we've got them old, but we all enjoy a treat after the game's over at halftime. So the Kiwanis Club is real involved. That's another way for you to engage with civic clubs and other groups like that to get them to help you with your programs. That helps off some of your staffing stuff. Assistive technologies, the field is rubber and easy. We use bigger, larger plastic bats and softer balls, and just ways to make it safe, but also more engaging and more able for everybody to participate. Extra support, we allow companions to come out, family, friends, siblings. This is not just for people with disabilities, and it's kind of how we look at inclusion. When we develop programs that have some special modifications and enhancements, we always include able-bodied people that can play with us. So that's what we want to do. We want to play together. So, we can play together on the field with or without disabilities, siblings and others who do not have disabilities come out. So it's just a great way to get everybody engaged and learn from involved. Yes, ma'am. Okay, some other examples of our program here at SportsAbility Alliance. We have our all-out adventure program. And we do that, again, with the 3 main ways: program modifications, assistive technologies, and extra support. 3 of the examples that we do with our all-out programs, we have mobility impaired hunts, partnering with the Fish and Wildlife Commission for years and the state refuge systems. But we also have private hunts where we invite people with mobility impairments to come out and enjoy a hunt with some assistance and some guidance, I guess, for more success. Beach and trail adventures. We use the Eco Rover as one of our great tools because it does really equalize opportunity for everybody to participate in outdoor recreation. Remember, we talked about ambulization or mobilization being one of the biggest barriers. When we put eco rovers or all-terrain wheelchairs out there as part of the program, whether you have a disability or not, it makes it enjoyable and fun, and just about anybody and everybody can participate. We even have remote controls for the chairs so that if the person does not have the ability to operate a joystick, which is a simple electric power mobility device, wheelchair, like a medical chair, but it operates the same way. But as you'll see with that picture, with the tracks, you can go through sand and mud and grass and rough terrain over bushes and limbs and logs and stuff. So it just really opens up the world to people who have limited mobility on where they can go. So we provide planned trips so that we can provide some guidance and some assistance to people. Hands Helping Anglers is another event that we do, and that's a fishing event that we do every year. And we match up volunteer boat captains in the community with people with disabilities and their family and friends to go out fishing on the day, on the bay here out of St. Mark's mostly, to go out to enjoy a day of fishing in boats on the beautiful St. Joe Bay. And that we again have some assistive poles and reels and what have you. Pontoon boats we found is one of the most adapted, modified assistive technology that you can provide for people with mobility limitations. And if I were going to invent a boat for people with disabilities to use, I would probably invent a pontoon boat. They're perfect. I mean, they allow you to roll right on and move around on the thing, and anybody and everybody can take a boat ride and go fishing on a boat that's like that. Extra support, we allow, again, companions to come out, family and friends. So when we fish, we want to do it with our friends and our buddies and what have you. So allowing people to do it together is an important part of inclusion. Okay, here's some examples. I told you I worked real close with FWC in the early days, just because I was a big hunter and fisherman. This picture is kind of unique because you see the eco rover there, but you also see a gun holder there, and you see actually a deer stand, homemade deer stand that was built to accommodate my limited mobility with a slope ladder and a shooting rail around it to make it safe and enjoyable. But it's mounted on a trailer, and I could pull it around with the eco rover to go to the hunts that we go to. So there's all kinds of ways to modify the activity to make it more enjoyable. I talked about fees earlier. FWC created a license exemption. They also created a mobility impaired certification, and that was because you're allowed or required to modify programs for people with specific disabilities. But we looked real close into this and figured out that there would be a lot of people requiring assistance that would take a lot of time and energy and effort to assess every one of those. So we came up with a mobility impaired certification that listed some of the basic conditions that would make you automatically eligible for that certification. That eliminated a lot of time and effort to individually look at requests from people. That's been a very successful program, and we have guidelines on what it means to be mobility impaired. But you still have the opportunity to become mobility impaired even if you don't meet the basic guidelines, just by applying for a modification. And then you would be looked at individually to see what you could do and what we could do to help you. Special use permits, that allows you to drive a vehicle with a permit on typically closed roads or roads where the other traffic is not allowed to go, and that's by special permit. And then we have an AMP permit, alternative mobilization permit, that allows a person with a mobility impairment to use an ATV in areas that are not allowed ATVs in a typical use pattern. So that ATV becomes a tool for a person with limited mobility to get out into the woods and into the outdoors areas so that they can participate equally or without those barriers. Technologies, we have shooting shooting ranges, gun ranges, and shooting ranges around the state that FWC have built with lowered benches for people in chairs, and they've even built elevated ramped shooting platforms that mimic shooting from a deer stand or a blind in an elevated position. So they've gone to some extra efforts to make sure that they're including people of all abilities in their shooting ranges. Okay, let's see what we got next. Okay, the state parks. Again, the State Park Foundation, most of you probably are familiar with it, is a foundation, 501c3, that actually supports our state parks. And the State Parks Foundation provides all kinds of supplemental resources for the state parks to do a better job of what they do. One of the things that the State Parks Foundation has done that's been so exciting and successful, they have embraced inclusion as part of their philosophy, and a lot of their funding and their programs are to accommodate the inclusion philosophy for state parks. And you'll see they have actually funded and built 2 accessible river boats, one at Silver Springs and one at Wakulla Springs, that allows people of any ability and all abilities to be able to get onto the boat to do a boat ride and a glass bottom boat ride and a jungle cruise and those things. So that was a big accomplishment that really helped a lot of people be able to enjoy the nature. Wheelchairs, beach wheelchairs. Beaches are one of the most difficult recreation areas to access and to eliminate barriers for, just for the nature of a beach. Sand and hills and dunes is very difficult. So most of our state parks now that are on beaches have beach wheelchairs. Some are floating chairs, enable you to get in and out of the water. And we now have some of the eco rovers in some of our state parks too that can be checked out and used to provide access to the beaches. And you can go to the state parks website and look at some of the disability amenities or enhancements that are around at all the state parks. You have to do a little bit of homework, go to your state park and check it out, but they've done a good job of adding many of the amendments or the enhancements that we have at our state park. So you can know before you go what you're getting into and to request assistance. Our state parks now have information in every park about, what do they call it? All access, I think. There's a name and a person and a phone number posted at every state park of someone you can contact if you have an issue or a need that you might get some assistance with. So that's another improvement of our state parks. They are willing to listen to your needs and trying to accommodate you. So I'm really proud of our state parks and what they've done over the years. Beach matting, which is a way to roll chairs and to walk easily onto the beach over the sands. We've got those at quite a few of the state parks now. And they're becoming more and more common because that's a very successful way to allow anyone and everyone to get down to the beach much easier. Those of you here in Florida know walking through that sugar sand can be difficult for anyone, but for folks in a wheelchair with limited mobility, sometimes impossible. So we've got more and more parks with the matting now. We've got accessible fishing piers. Along with FWC, they've done the same thing. They've got accessible fishing piers, and their websites list some of those spots too. So I would always say go back and do a little research to look for accessible fishing piers in our state parks and accessible fishing piers in the state of Florida that FWC provides, because they're out there. But again, that knowledge thing is one of the things we have to really work at. Or looking for information is the big thing nowadays. Wheelchair trams, to get people from recreation areas down to the beaches and back and forth within our parks. They've done a great job of acquiring some trams at some of our bigger parks that allows people to shuttle back and forth where ambulation or mobility becomes an issue. You just have to do a little bit of looking. Viewfinders, they've got some binoculars mounted on the little stands at lowered elevators so that people in wheelchairs or children can reach them and see out of them. So trying to include people with all aspects of what they do when you go to a park. We go to a park to recreate. We go to a park for the programs. We don't go to the park there just to find an accessible parking place or an accessible restroom, which all those are required, and we have to start with those. But we go there for some reason, wildlife viewing or swimming or fishing or just picnicking, whatever that reason is, that's the program. So we need to make sure that all of our programs are accessible and that we look at all components. One missing link in the chain of accessibility can eliminate people from using it. So you got to think it through from the very beginning, from the time you pull up to the time you leave. What kind of barriers are you gonna come up against? All right, let's see what else we got. Okay, we are a resource for you, and we're glad to take and try to help you with any needs that you may have. I've been around a long time, as you see. Like I said, I got shot in 1988, created the organization in 1990. So I've been blessed with a lot of good years of meeting with a lot of good people and learning about a lot of resources. And I'm willing to share those with folks when you have issues and looking for solutions. So feel free to call on us anytime. We do have an online network of resources. It's called the My Needs Network, where we have a lot of the mostly recreation and leisure activity resources listed by, I think they're listed by county or zip code and by activity. So you can go online to our network that is kind of merged with a big network out of UF. They put together a disability needs network, and we became their recreation component to that disability needs network through our partnering and collaborating with them. So now a lot of the recreation and leisure resources that you might want to find can be found by going to that My Needs network. That's available right on our website, and that's the sportsability.org website. And I think we probably got that on the next slide. Yep, there you go. That's our address. If you want to write a check, make a donation, you want to mail it to us, that's where you would send it. Yeah. Eliza Road here in Tallahassee, and info@sportsability.org, and our website is sportsability.org. So check us out. There's a lot of good information there, and if you don't find something you need, or if a question arises through your looking at our programs, I would personally love to help you in any way I can. So you can contact me at that number. I think there's a selection for David Jones, but I'd be glad to help you and answer any questions. About how we're going to do questions.
But I wonder. All right, let's see. Let me check the chat box. It does not look like there's any questions in the chat box. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or type them in the chat box.
Y'all probably figured out by now I'm a pretty low-tech guy, so I'm real big on the chat box and all the things. We were trying to figure out how to put a different background screen for me, but I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology. So if you have a question, certainly unmute yourself and blurt it out now, or I'm available anytime down the road. You can shoot me an email or a phone call, and I'm glad to take any questions.
All right, here's one that popped up. How do people with unique abilities find places to go? Do they use Google, county websites, or tourism sites?
You know, nowadays, it's not what you know, it's how to find out what you need to know. And of course, Google and AI is so dominant nowadays. Google's just a first thing you do when you have a question, you Google it. But yes, I would say certainly start with your own research, because that's so important. Many programs and opportunities for people to go places and do things and have destinations in mind, starting to get it now. And so they're starting to list those things on their websites. So you can go to the websites and look. And we're trying to teach that with our knowledge-based thing, that providers need to brag about what they do provide and what is available for folks to come. That's one of the barriers. Lack of knowledge is also people with disabilities don't know where to go, what to do, and how to do it. So start with your own Google search right off the bat. And I would research your local recreation providers first and call them, get to know them, tell them, you've got a disability. Don't be shy. Share your disability or your concern for whomever it is. And then they should have some solution options to explore. Not that they're going to have the answers for every issue you've got, but start with them and let them know you are requesting some help. And you'd be surprised at the help you can find.
Okay, perfect. Well, that is it for the questions. Thank you so much for answering those questions and for your presentation, David. That wraps up today's webinar. And a recording of today's webinar will post to our site once it's available, and I'll send everyone a follow-up email. Please tune in next month to learn about the Florida's Gulf Coast Trail from Program Director Charles Hines. If you or anyone has any questions, or if there's something you'd like to present on our webinar, please email us at officeofgreenwaysandtrails@floridadep.gov. And thanks again, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and check our site for the tape of this webinar. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you all for joining in, and look forward to working with you if I can help you.
Thank you, David.